Good morning, church. How's everyone doing? Well, hey, my name is Jonathan, one of the staff pastors. Super excited to be with you guys today. Super excited to share. Super thankful for Pastor Mike giving me the opportunity today and not leaving me in Thailand. That was also very generous of him to do. He did let an elephant step on me, though, which that's the story for another time. We don't have time for that, but stay tuned. Some of you guys are like, oh my gosh, this is weird. Well, hey, I am super excited about this series that we're in. Has anyone else been enjoying this Choices series that we've been in? Man, I have loved it. It's been great. If you've missed any of them, they're online. Pastor Andrew spoke this past Wednesday about obedience and submission and everything. Man, it was good. It was good. It was really good. And he even told funny stories about his childhood, which Pastor Andrew has the best childhood stories. So I'm telling you, it's crazy. It's amazing he's alive. It's amazing he's alive for multiple reasons. But we're going to dive right in. And today we're talking about choices, and I want to talk to you about faith over certainty. That's the thing that we're talking about. Because, choices are something we're familiar with. We make choices every single day, dozens, maybe even hundreds of choices when you really look at it. And some of the choices are really important, like how many donuts you're going to get at church this morning. It's an important decision you have to make, That's a joke. So there's choices that we make. Some of them are not so important, right? You get choices that you just have to make. But we're faced with choices all the time. And we come to these roadblocks. Here's one that I know that everyone is, at nighttime when you're watching Netflix, when it says, "Are you still there?" It's a choice. God's intervening. He's like, you should go to sleep. But we just say, I think I can watch one more and continue. And then you fall asleep, and then, it's choices, right? We're familiar with choices. And God is all about choices. God's a God of choices, because God from the very beginning established it that he wanted people to have choice, because he understands that something that's forced on someone is not a choice and it's not real. He could have made it where you didn't have any choice and you just had to serve him and love him, but that kind of service is not a real relationship. When something is forced on you, you don't have choice, right? And it can't be a real deal. And so he wanted from the very beginning to have a relationship with people out of choice. And so with Adam and Eve at the very beginning, from the very, very beginning, he went ahead and gave them choice. And he said he wanted to have a relationship with them. He had a plan for them. And really, they had one choice to make. Everything was okay. He just said, just don't pick the fruit and eat the fruit of this one tree. All these other ones are fine, right? But even in that, he was so good and so generous. He gave this ability where everything is good. There's just one thing not to do, but it's choice. And as long as you choose not to do that, and trust me when I say don't do it, everything's going to be fine. Right? Well, human nature has this issue of we don't like to trust. We have trust issues because we like to know something. And that's the exact thing that the enemy came and played on with Adam and Eve. He came and said to them, are you sure? Are you sure that if you eat this fruit that you'll really die? Because I think actually God is holding something back from you. You shouldn't trust him. Don't trust him. He's keeping something from you. If you just eat this fruit, you'll know the difference between good and evil. And it's interesting because what he's saying is right now, you have to trust God. But if you eat that fruit, you can be certain. You can be certain about it. You'll know exactly what you're doing. Go ahead, just do it. And you know what? They decided to walk in and they made that decision together that they would rather have certainty over trusting God. And so they disobeyed him only to find out that certainty led to immediate embarrassment and the immediate knowledge of their shortcoming and how much they needed a savior. Because as soon as they ate it, it says they realized they were naked and they realized that God was going to be angry with them and they tried to hide from him. So from the very beginning, they had this relationship where they chose certainty over the opportunity to trust what God had for them, to trust that he was good and he wasn't keeping anything from them. And in fact, in that scenario, the thing he was keeping them from was sin itself. But they made the decision not to trust because they preferred the certainty of knowing, right? And you fast forward, and we're going to cover a lot of Bible history. We're really going to do a lot of Old Testament, just fast forward. But Abraham When God called him out of the land of his birth and took him to a new land and said, this is going to be yours, we're making a covenant. I have a plan for you. He basically said, I'm going to swear an oath between myself, and your only part in this relationship is to trust me, to have faith in me. You know, that's why the New Testament says that Abraham was counted as righteous because of his faith. Not because of the good works he did, not because he lived a life blameless or free from sin. In fact, it was quite the contrary if you study the life of Abraham. But he had ultimate faith and trust in God. And did he make mistakes? Sure, absolutely he did. But at the end of the day, he trusted God and his goodness, and that he would walk in this relationship and this covenant that was based on God making a promise to himself. And through that, he got to walk in basically it was like a graceful covenant where it wasn't about if Abraham did what was right or wrong. It was more about did he trust God? And he trusted God with plenty of mistakes on the way. Like when he lied about his wife being his sister, when he tried to have his own kid out of the promise. Like there's a lot of issues. But you know what? He decided to trust God ultimately, and he got the promise. He got the son of the promise. And so we fast forward, and the story we're going to focus on a little bit more is Moses and the nation of Israel. And you know, here's the thing that happens whenever you look at this story. Abraham's told you're going to be a father of many nations, and he has one son. He never gets to really see the promise come to fruition. He has kids, but he doesn't have a multitude of nations. But if you fast forward hundreds of years, now all of a sudden Israel has become so great, and there's such a multitude that while they're living in the land of the most powerful nation in the world, Egypt gets concerned, and they're worried about the Israelites. And they believe that if we don't oppress these people, if we don't make these people our slaves, they're going to take over our whole country. And so they begin to oppress the Israelites, and they begin to try to stop it at the source. And they say, man, they're really fruitful. They're a really fruitful bunch. So you know what? We're going to just start killing any of their kids. We're not going to allow their kids to live. Because I don't want you to know, listen, the enemy hates your kids. And the enemy wants to stop your kids before they ever have a chance. So if you believe, I've got years until they're in their teenage years, then I can start trying to protect. Listen, from the second that they're conceived, the enemy hates them. He hates new life. And his greatest goal, if you look through the history, whether it's New Testament or Old Testament, one of his greatest tools is try to attack life at the very beginning. He does not want your kids to live. He does not want your kids to succeed. He does not want them to be the next generation who understand. So he is going to attack them. So parents, speak the truth over them from the very beginning. Speak God's blessing over them, and speak those words that won't return void, because you know what? There's an enemy out there who does not want your kids to succeed. And it was the same thing for Moses from those kids. The enemy did not want Israel to continue to grow. He did not want leaders to go, so he tried to get them from the very beginning. But we know the story. Moses ends up going in the basket on the river, and he gets saved, ends up going and living in the Pharaoh's house because the princess adopted him. It was this whole thing. And, you know, he gets kicked out because he murdered someone, and he goes and he's living in the wilderness, and we have this whole story. And God speaks to him. And it's interesting because during this whole season, the Israelites have this relationship with God, but they're not practicing this relationship with God. A lot of them don't really know. They know the stories of Father Abraham, but they don't have a relationship with God. But you see, their relationship with God was based on that promise that he made Abraham. And because of that, it wasn't about what they did or didn't do. It was based on the promise he'd already made to Abraham and he made to himself. And there's something so beautiful because when he went to Moses and he appeared to him in the burning bush, he said, I heard the cries of my children, and I was moved to compassion. You see, they didn't even know to call out and to pray to God. They didn't even know to ask. All they did was cry, and the Father came. You see, when I hear my kids crying, when one of my boys does something, I'm moved to action by their cries. Now, usually I get there and I think, why did you do? What were you doing? You thought that was a good idea? Jumping off the top bunk is never a good idea. But they did it, so here it is. But you're moved. And you know what? The actual Hebrew word, it wasn't even cry. It wasn't even a prayer. It wasn't even words. It was a groan. He said, I heard them groaning, and I was moved to action. So God the Father heard the Israelites, and based on the promise and the covenant that he had with them, he went and he saved them because they had a promise. He was going to fulfill his promise. So we know the story. Moses comes, it's crazy. He drops the staff, the snakes, and all this stuff, all that kind of stuff. River turns into blood. All these things happen. And eventually the Pharaoh says, man, you guys are worthless. I want you out of here. Like, you're just ruining everything. So they let the Israelites leave. And they leave, right? They cross the Red Sea. It splits apart. These Israelites get to see all these miracles of God, all these incredible things. God's leading them literally by a pillar of fire and smoke. I mean, they've literally been led, and they get to the other side, and you think, man, these people are going to be so in love with Jesus. They're going to love God so much. Like, it's so good because they've seen the glory of God. But if you read the story, that's not the case. All they did was grumble and complain the entire time. And I have a newsflash for you. You may be sitting there, because I've had this same thought and thought, man, if I was an Israelite, no way I'd be like that. No way if I saw God, if I walked through water, no way I would grumble and complain. If he was literally giving me this food, no way I'd be the person that I'm tired of this supernatural food. I want other supernatural food. You've only given me one choice in your supernatural buffet. I want more. I want more. And we sit there and say, oh, it wouldn't be us. But hey, I got a news flash for you. It would be you. And it would be me. You know why? Because without Jesus, we're the same sinful people who grumble and complain. Without a relationship with God, there's nothing good inside of you that wouldn't be just like them, that would complain. We have people who complain at church. And the same every week, at least every week, someone comes and complains to me that it's too hot in the auditorium. Every week. And at the same time, someone comes and complains to me that it's too cold in the auditorium. Same auditorium. We are people who complain. Don't look at the Israelites and say, oh, I'd never do that. If I just saw one of those miracles, my faith would be great. It wouldn't. It wouldn't. If you look at the disciples and say, if I got to hang out with Jesus, I'd never be like them. I would be in there. I'd be closer than John. Like, John would have been behind me. I'd been so close because it only took one of those things. The first time he went that water into wine, boy, I'd been there. No, you wouldn't have. You'd have been the same one doing the exact same things that they did. So would I. You know why? Because without Jesus, we're lost. If you're anywhere other than that today, it's because Jesus has done a work in your life. Because Jesus has changed you. Because Jesus has changed your perspective. And you know what? These people were here and they're walking around and they're grumbling and they're complaining and they're whining. And you know what? During all this time, talking bad, cursing God, looking back at all these situations, saying the most ridiculous things, God never once punished them. Never once. He just continually walked in love towards them. He continued to provide for them. He continued to show mercy to them because at this time in Israel's history, it wasn't about what they did. It was about the promise that God had already made to himself. He already made a promise to them that I'm going to keep you. I'm going to take care of you. I have a land for you. And so he was doing this. And so they had such revisionist history. They began saying things like, man, why'd we ever leave Egypt? It was so good back there. Do you remember? Do you remember how good it was? Like, obviously they forgot when they were being whipped and beaten and had to work all day, meager rations, they were killing all their kids, right? But it's like, it was so good back there. And we do the same thing. We feel like God leads us from one job to another, like, that old job was pretty sweet. They had ramen in the break room, and this new one, the Keurig machine they don't have my favorite Starbucks roast, and the Dunkin' Donuts is not the same, and I keep asking. That old job was good. I know my boss cursed me, and I didn't get paid very much, and sometimes they forgot to pay me, but man, my chair had 3 different comfort settings. And my new one only has 2. It's just not as good. This isn't as good. Like, why did we do that about the past? When we look back on it, we forget all the bad, and then we're like, that actually wasn't that bad. This was the same thing. We would have been better if we just stayed in Egypt. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. And even in that, God was showing them grace and mercy to them. But then you fast forward, and this thing happens. He's been doing this the whole way. And the whole time, all he's saying is, trust me. Just trust me. Follow me. I'm even going to make it easy for you. I'm literally going to have a physical thing you can follow, a fireball or a big cloud of smoke. Like, I'm not even going to ask you to do it blindly, like I'm going to ask people to do it one day. You and I have to do faith by blindly. Like, he literally had something. Like, just follow the fireball. And they're like, I don't know if it knows where it's going. I think if I was leading, we'd go this way, but the fireball's going that way, and that's a lot to ask for me to follow it. But I guess I'll go. But in Egypt, it was way easier. I didn't have to follow fireballs. I could go wherever I wanted. To slavery. Simpler time. So it leads them to Mount Sinai, and this whole time that God is just being so good to them, and they don't even see it. They don't even see it. They're being just trust me, and they're struggling with that. And sometimes it's hard to trust God. I understand that. Like I said, we would be in the exact same spot. But something interesting happens in this story. And at Mount Sinai, Moses goes up to the Lord, and the Lord tells him, hey, listen, you guys are here. I have a plan for you. I have a promised land for you. I still am going to fulfill the promise I had to Abraham. And you know what? I want your people to be my chosen people. And if you'll follow my commandments, if you follow what I tell you to do, you know what? We're going to be good. We're going to be good. And Moses comes down and tells the people this message. And you know, if the people truly understood God, if they really had a trust in God, their response would have been something to the effect of, God, listen, we don't want any extra rules. We want to trust you. You've gotten us this far. You walked us out of Egypt with no one sick. You walked us out with riches. We walked across the Red Sea on dry land. We've struck the rock and water has come out. Food has been provided. You know what? At this point, I think you're doing a good job. Can we keep things exactly how they are? Let's not do any renegotiation. If your command is to trust you, then you know what? Let us just trust you. But that's not what they wanted. Because when Moses came down, they took this posture, and what they said was, great. This is actually what we've wanted the whole time. Just tell us what to do, and we will do it. Anything you tell us to do, we're going to do it. Because that brings certainty. Because I haven't enjoyed this, I'm just blindly following the smoke and the fireball. I don't like that. I would rather you tell me what to do, then it can be in my control, and I can plan my day a little bit better. I know where I'm going to go, and then it's mine. So now it's on me, and I prefer that because I like certainty. Certainty is great for me, Jesus, so thanks. Just tell me what to do. It won't be a problem, and I'll do it. Moses, go pass that message on to God. Thank you. We're ready. So, Moses tells God that, and God says, sounds good. You want rules, and you want laws, you want certainty. That sounds great. I will give that to you. And he gives them the law and the 10 Commandments, and they didn't make it one day before they almost broke every single one. And here's the thing. This whole time they've been uttering, mumbling, complaining, and speaking bad, and God's shown them nothing but grace. But the second that they decided, I want certainty, he said, that's fine. Certainty brings something else, and it's the certainty of consequences. And on the day that the law was given, 3,000 people were killed the first day. The very first day. Because the certainty also brings the certainty of punishment. It was very simple. Do everything I ask, or else I'm going to kill you. That's it. That's the law altogether. Do everything I ask, or else I'm going to kill you. Because the thing you have to understand is I am pure and righteous and holy. And before, you had me say a covenant between myself. So I decided that I, the perfect, righteous, holy one, am going to make a promise with myself who's going to give you a pardon and is going to give you grace and is going to give you mercy. And I decided to pay that price and make that work. But what happened was you removed part of me from the situation. So now this is a promise between me, the perfect, holy, upright God, and now you, the failure. And the moment that the 10 Commandments were given was the moment they were broken. And people had to pay the price because God's perfection cannot allow sin in it. And 3,000 died the very first day. Not only that, Moses came down with these things. I mean, it's the first iPad. Like, they write them down, and they come in, And he gets so mad because he'd only been gone for a couple days and they set out all these altars and all this different. He comes down and he breaks them. He throws them at him, which he probably instantly regretted if you've ever broken something in anger. And then you're like, ooh, I did not mean to do that to my phone. So he has to go back up to God and be like, hey, God, those things that you wrote down, the first time ever in the world's history when you wrote on those tablets, and then you gave them to me, I broke them. And I didn't write it down anywhere else. I didn't have a backup copy. So what's the process here? Like, can you give me another one? Is there a fee associated with that? I got a lot of people down there I'm upset at. I can give you as many of them one as sacrifice if that's what it takes. So I just need another copy. I promise I'll do better with these 10. The old 10, I didn't do such a good job. I was angry, which probably was breaking a commandment. So God rewrites them. But here's the thing. They're like, no, this is good. Now we're certain. Now we know what to do. I don't need to trust God. I'm certain. So certain, in fact, they said, you know what's better than 10 rules? 10 is like, 10, there's still some question marks. We're going to go ahead and make 600 more rules on top of this. Because 10 still had some gray in there. So we'll add 600 more. Because I need to be really specific. I need to know, because I like to be certain. So let's add 600 more is good. And it gets really specific. Like, for example, there's rules like if you're cutting down a tree and your axe handle flies off and embeds that handle into a person's head, killing them, you're not at fault. It was an accident. But the other person's family can come kill you. So you need to run as fast as you can to a sanctuary area. And the people are like, great, perfect, certainty, I love it. I can totally do that. But all it did, certainty in the law only leads to death. It only leads to death. And that's exactly what it led the Israelites to. And you fast forward in this story because something crazy happens. They get to the point where they need to go to the promised land. He sends Joshua and Caleb over there along with these other 10 people. And they come back and they say, it's great, it's amazing, everything's great. Because God said, I'm going to give you a land that you're going to reap a harvest you never sowed. You're going to live in houses you didn't build. It's going to be incredible. I'm going to show you this place. But then when they get there, they come back and the 10 people say, yeah, man, it's incredible. You wouldn't believe it. The houses are awesome. There's walls. There's grapes that are so big. It took 2 of us to carry them. And those are some serious grapes. When 2 dudes got to carry it on a pole, like that's serious grapes, right? And it's like, well, it's great. But there's a problem. People live there. And they're really big guys. And we looked at it and we decided we can't do it on our own. We're certain of one thing, we can't do it. So we're not going to do it. We can live in the wilderness. We're good with that. We're certain we can do that fine, but we couldn't go into the promised land. And Joshua and Caleb it came out there, and they said, no. They begged the people, listen, yeah, there's people, there's giants, there's all those things that they said, but you know what? Certainly God, the one who promised us and said we could have it, he'll deliver us. We can't do it, but he said he would do it, so let's just go with him. Let's walk into the promised land. But the people rejected it and said no. They said no. Here's the thing, church. They wanted to live in what they knew they could control the outcome. We don't know what the outcome is over there, but we can take care of ourselves here. We're good. We're good here. I've got it. But God had something else. God never calls you to a place where you don't need him. He only calls you to a place where you desperately need him. We call ourselves to places that we don't need God all the time. Oh, God, don't worry, I don't need you in this. My finances, I've got it. I don't need you in it. I got it. Got a good job. I took a course, 10 Steps to Richness, and I'm good. I don't need you. I need you maybe over here, but I don't need you in this area. That's good. And God's like, but I have more. And here's the funny thing. The Israelites end up wandering for 40 years in this desert. And in the area that they thought they had certainty and that they didn't need God, they still needed God to show up and keep them safe. And God's saying to you and I have a place for you, a promised land that's called for you. But if you don't trust me to walk into it, if you won't walk in trust towards me, you're just going to wander around in the wilderness. And here's the thing, you're still going to need me. The only difference is you're in the wilderness and not the promised land. Where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? And you know, it's crazy because Caleb and Joshua, the only two who actually get to go into the promised land. You know, Caleb's name isn't really significant. It just means dog. He's a dog. Loyal, maybe. I don't know. He's great. But Joshua, that wasn't even his name. His name was Hosea. And Hosea means salvation. But Moses wouldn't call him Hosea. You know, Moses kept the tradition of like, we're just going to call people different names. If I don't like what your name is, or I think there's a better way to call it, I'm going to call you something that means something more. And so instead of calling him Hosea, he called him Joshua. And Joshua means Jehovah is salvation. Because every time he sent Joshua, he said, it's not going to be your salvation. It's not going to be my salvation. God is the salvation, and he's going to do something because he's called us to a place. But here's the good news, church. Here's the good news for us today. The Israelites ultimately went into the promised land. And city by city, place by place, God won amazing battles and amazing victories for him. And he did it. And he got them to the place, and he fulfilled his promise for them. But we have even a better news today. Because all of that ultimately was for a price, was for something. Because Jesus was on the way. And God ended up sending Jesus so that God and Jesus could make a new promise, so we could walk into a new covenant of God's grace, a perfect covenant. The covenant between Abraham was pretty good. The law was actually perfect. It just led to death. But now he said, I have something new, and it's between me and my son, and we've already paid the price, and the way has been made so that you can walk in righteousness. The only thing you need to do is trust me. Just like Abraham, trust me. Have trust in me. Have faith that I will bring you where you're called to be. But that's hard because we like certainty. So we go back to God and say, hey, this is great. I know Jesus paid the price. That's awesome. What do I need to do? How many times should I read the Bible? How many times do I need to go to church? How many dollars do I need to tithe? How many times do I need to tell a stranger I love them? Just tell me the thing, I can do it. And God's like, you don't need to do any of that. You need to trust me. You're like, well, I don't want to trust you. I just want to do it. Can you just tell me what to do? That was me. That's who I was. God, I don't need you. You came to die for sinners. I'm great. I don't need you for that. Just tell me what you want me to do to live righteous, and I'll do it. You see, I know what the Israelites were saying because that's who I was. I was just a new version of it. I believed I didn't need God for anything. I was like, I don't need you. I can just tell me how many times I need to go to church and I'll do it. Just tell me how often I need to read the Bible and I'll do it. And God the whole time was saying, this is not what I need. This is not what I have for you. I have a greater grace for you. I have something that's new. All you need to do is trust me. All you need to do is to walk in what I've already done for you, and I can change you. I don't need to change you from the outside in. I can change you from the inside out. You just have to walk and trust me. Because Hebrews 11 says, faith is the reality of what we hope for. It's the evidence of the things we can't see. You see, faith is what we believe no matter what our circumstances are. But that's hard because we see with our eyes. We feel with our heart and our emotions. And sometimes those things don't line up. But the good news is the Word became flesh, and He lives, and He breathes, and He came, and He died, and He made a way. And His Word is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and He has a plan for you. And so it doesn't matter what your relationship looks like right now. God says, I can heal that marriage, and I can restore it. It doesn't matter what your financial situation looks like. He says, if you just trust in me, I can turn it around. I have a plan for you. I've had a plan since before you were born, and it was good things. And there's nothing you've done in this life that disqualifies you, because you can't be disqualified. Because my son came and he paid the price and he laid his life down so that you can't be disqualified, but you get to be earned by the blood that was so precious you'll never understand it this side of heaven. And so don't you dare disqualify what I qualified already. I have a plan for you. Your kids will not run away. You will be able to prosper in this land. That relationship is restored. There is life inside of you. I have a promised land for you, and it's a calling. And you know what? When you walk in it, you get to see it. Don't give up on it. Don't quit on it. Don't do it. And church, we're in a season of transition. Vivi and I are in a season of transition. And you know what? We're excited, but we're scared. We have faith, but we have doubt. And Jesus says, I can do anything. You believe in me, I can even help you with your unbelief. I can walk you through that where it is. And you know what? I just look back, this may seem rapid to you, but God's been taking me on a 10-year journey to get me where I was. At the broken place where all I could do was sit there with fear inside of my mind. He says, I want to heal you from what's holding you back because I have a plan for you. And all these shortcomings in this life that you lived hasn't just qualified for you from where I'm going, because there's something that you're called to do and you're going to walk it out. And it's not going to be through your strength, but you're going to be tied to me. And I have a plan, and we're going to walk it through. And there was days where all I could do was come home and sit there, afraid I was going to lose everything, and say, Jesus, you haven't given me a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. And I just kept saying it to the point where I thought the voices inside of my head were going to eat me alive. And you know what? Jesus said, don't listen to the voice of the stranger. Listen to the voice of me. I have something for you. It doesn't matter what they say is going on in your situation. It doesn't matter what the doctor's proclamation is over your life. My proclamation is something different. And it doesn't matter what he said. I have a plan for you. He said, you're going to come and you're going to reap a harvest that you didn't plant. You're going to live in a house you didn't build. And you know what? Things are going to change and lives are going to be set free. Not because of you, but because of me. Because Jesus is good and he lives and he won't give up on you and he won't give up on your circumstance. He never will. And all he asks from you is trust. All he asks is for you not to give up. To believe. It may not be the way you think it's going to happen. It may not be the timeline that you think it's going to be. But I can promise you this, it'll be better than you could ever think. I'm excited for where the church is going. I'm excited about what's happening. I'm excited about this transition, not because I think I'm a great person, but even more importantly, because I think Jesus is good and he's stirring in people and he's stirring people's hearts and he's moving in things. And there's people in this world who are lost, who need a Savior. And there's people sitting in this room who they know Jesus, but Jesus has never been able to kick down the door of your heart and say, let me in and let me change you. And I was there living in a fortress of selfishness inside of my heart. And Jesus came and broke down that door and said, let me heal you from the things that are holding you back to be the person I've called you to be. Because you're not supposed to be miserable on this earth. You get to live on heaven and earth here because I paid that price. Don't allow the selfishness that you walk through to believe that you're not that person. You are that person. Jesus came. I don't care if you've been going to this church since before it started. I don't care if you've been going to this church and Jesus is there. And you say, well, I'm embarrassed to say this is where I'm at. Jesus isn't embarrassed. Jesus is a redeemer. He redeems and he restores time. It doesn't matter how long you've been walking in your own way. He says, one day with me is better than 1,000 anywhere else. I can change your future. I can change your past. I can change the results of the decisions you made. But are you going to walk on it? Are you going to trust in him? Or are you going to decide to have confidence in yourself? Because I gave up in myself a long time ago. I realized exactly what path that would lead me down, and that path wasn't a place that led to anything successful in my life. If it was up to me, I would have lost my family, I would have lost my life, and everything would have been gone. But Jesus in his grace came and said, I can pick you up. I can restore you. Will you trust me? And at my lowest point, I realized what it meant when that woman came who was a prostitute and wept at the feet of Jesus and cleaning him. And those Pharisees said, if Jesus only knew who she was, he wouldn't let her touch him, because they were afraid of being defiled. But you see, when something that's perfectly holy, when you touch something that's perfectly holy, you don't make it unclean. The cleanness just rubs off on you. And he said to them something that changed my life. He said, do you know why she loves me so much? Because she knows how much she's been forgiven. Do you know why you don't love me so much? Because you think you haven't been forgiven much. I lived a lifetime believing that I hadn't been forgiven much because I was a good person, because I went to church and because I read my Bible and I was a good guy and I didn't do that much bad things. But the reality was that wasn't the truth. I was the adulterous woman. I was the woman stuck in sin. And at the very bottom, Jesus said, now you know why you love me so much. And now I love him so much because that's who I am. He picked me up and he gave me the power to go and sin no more. And he gave me the power to go and to make the right choices. And he changed me from the inside out. And I'm not anyone special. He'll do the same for you. He'll change your life. I don't care if you're in here and you're a teenager, or I don't care if you're 99 years old. It's never too late. He's the God of the impossible. He's the God that restores everything. He's the God that walks outside of time and he picks you. And in this moment, you're here together. In church, we're here together and God's calling us to something greater. He's calling us to something new. He's calling us to reach people with a love that changes lives, both for the lost, but also for the believer. If your life isn't completely different, if your life isn't 100% free, he says, then let's keep going. Because Jesus comes to confront the dysfunction in your life, and whatever separates you from the Father, he comes and looks you straight in the eye and says, I love you enough to tell you, you need to give up this addiction. You need to give up this thought life. You need to give up this thing that's holding you back because I have a promised land for you, and you're not living in it. You're walking in the wilderness, and I have something better for you on the other side. Trust me. Just trust me. I'm doing a new thing. Rivers in the wilderness that spring forth life. You'll be a tree planted next to the river of salvation. Your children will be the olive branches filled with the anointing of God and the holiness dripping down from them. The prize in your collection. Every one of these promises for you, church. But we just have to do the thing that even though it seems easy on paper, it's the hardest thing. Trust. And take one step and watch him do what he said he was going to do. So today, as we're here, if you say, you know what? I'm going to walk in trust. I'm going to leave certainty behind because certainty will always lead to death. But faith will always lead to peace that passes all understanding and joy that's inexplicable in your life. And the result will be what God has for you this entire time. So if that's you today, in this last song, as an outward expression of your trust and your faith in God, just stand up and worship him today.